So I'm Ellen, and I hope we can try to give you guys some tips and answer any questions you might have. I just want to say, please feel free to ask any questions or put them in the chat or anything, and we'll try to answer them during the presentation. We don't necessarily have to wait till the end. Next slide, please. So I just want to give you a little bit of background. So I am the research manager for C17, which is a national organization that provides leadership in pediatric hematology and oncology. There are 17 pediatric hospitals and cancer centers across Canada that we work with, and our office is located in Edmonton. So there are several different aspects of C17, but one of the main ones is the regulatory office, which I oversee, and we're responsible for submission of CTAs for academic clinical trials to Health Canada, for SUSAR reporting for those clinical trials, and then regulatory compliance and monitoring of the sites. Next slide. So this is just a quick map to show you where all of our sites are across Canada, and we work with all of them. So because C17 oversees the monitoring for the international sponsors, Steph and I have had a lot of experience with both on-site and remote monitoring. I have more experience as a monitor and also as someone who oversees the monitors doing the actual at the site work. Steph has had lots of experience as a monitor, but also as a site representative who receives the monitors to her site to do the monitoring. And so she's got sort of two different sides there that she'll be able to speak to. I just want to go over a little bit about our C17 monitoring program. So our programs are developed to complement the sponsor or the originating group monitoring plan because they're often not enough for what Health Canada expects to be done in terms of standards. So we work with the lead sponsor group. And so the first type of program that we developed was our central and peer-to-peer monitoring program. We also have some sponsors who prefer that the C17 staff go on site and do the monitoring. And then now, because of COVID, we've had to develop a remote monitoring plan as well. So one of the things that we really try to emphasize in all of our monitoring is that it's about quality control. It's not about being negative or punitive when the monitors are doing the actual monitoring, unless there's critical findings like fraud or obvious things that shouldn't have happened. We never try to have it be punitive. We want it to be a learning experience and to help sites to understand that, you know, quality improvement is the goal. Oh, Steph, you got to unmute.
Sorry about that. Just from the site point of view, research monitoring often provides evidence to change and improve clinical practices. So not just research practices, but practices across your division or perhaps across the hospital. So my tip is to embrace the findings and use them to your advantage to better overall care of the patients.
So our main program that we've been using now for about 10 years is our central and peer-to-peer monitoring program. So as you might expect, it has two parts to it. One is the central review of regulatory documents by C17 staff. And the second is a peer-to-peer on-site monitoring of the institution, pharmacy, and patient cases. Next slide. Oh, sorry, this is your stuff, sorry.
That's okay. So I'm just going to go through what the site is responsible for with the peer-to-peer monitoring. So we have to find local individuals that meet the criteria to monitor. That mainly means that they don't have a conflict of interest and they're independent of either the study or the part of the study being monitored. So for example, you can have a CRA who's not assigned to that study monitor someone else's study. If a CRA only works on regulatory and reg, perhaps they can do the patient cases in pharmacy. We do that often at our site. And you can always have an MD or allied staff, like a quality assurance person from your site research institute. Perhaps there's another department that has another, that needs monitoring on their end, and you can sort of swap out staffing for the monitoring and things like that. But the main thing is to make sure that they weren't involved in that part of the study that you're monitoring. So they have to be a member of the HEMONC discipline. That's for us anyway. For other
Yeah.
disciplines, obviously it's different. And or a CRA that is CCRP eligible or certified, and or an auditor monitor from institution's QA department. So that means, you know, it can be, like I said, CRAs, MDs, QA person. Smaller institutions often monitor each other if necessary. And I just actually did this for someone else. The smaller institutions can get non-local peers to monitor them remotely, or clinical research staff from another disease group. So just to keep in mind, there's options there. Reach out to your network within your hospital, as well as, you know, within your disease group, if you have that. So this is the really big tip for me, and I sort of live by this every day if I'm doing, or if I'm training people, or if I'm doing things myself. Think like a monitor every day in your job. So, you know, the other thing is, do you have to choose someone who has a lot of experience? So the more experience in monitoring and quality management, the better for peer-to-peer monitors. But you should train your new and mid-level CRAs to monitor so they can think like a monitor while they're doing their ordinary work in everyday life. They'll also know what to expect when monitoring happens. And, you know, it just pays off in the long run to do a little bit of work up front, training them with monitoring and auditing. And it can lead to better quality research and less burnout with your CRA staff, because they understand why they're getting dinged for the findings that they have.
So the second program we have is on-site monitoring. And so this is where some sponsors would prefer that we send monitors from the C17 office rather than using our peer-to-peer monitoring program. This often happens when US sponsors have a monitoring program, but they don't necessarily have a monitor who can monitor in French. So they would be doing the English sites themselves and ask us to provide a monitor who can monitor in French for the Quebec sites. But the process is exactly the same as for the peer-to-peer monitoring program. It's just entirely conducted by an external monitor. Next slide. And then the third program we have is, of course, is the remote monitoring, which has really come about because of the pandemic, because of all the travel restrictions and hospital access restrictions. Our on-site monitoring stopped very abruptly in March, and we had to still maintain compliance. Health Canada expected us to still be compliant with all the monitoring plans, and the sponsors wanted us to remain compliant with their monitoring plan. And as well, the Hospital and Research Institute SOPs might have dictated that monitoring had to continue as well. So we had to find a really flexible way to be able to continue this, given all of these restrictions. So 3 different ways that we have now done some remote monitoring is by redacted documents review, remote EMR access, and then secure video conference and screen sharing. So using redacted documents, some of the tips that we have come up with in terms of this is if you're sending us everything, you have to make sure you schedule the monitoring visit well ahead of time, at least 2 months in advance. That just gives the sites time to prepare the documents that they need to send to you. Asking them, 2 weeks ahead of time, hey, can we have a monitoring visit, is not going to work. So I've learned I've had to make sure that I do schedule well ahead of time. That gives the site time to prepare. And then for each type of monitoring, I send a list of very specific documents that I'm going to need. And I try not to ask for everything. I select only really the critical elements that need to be monitored. So it's not going to be exactly the same as an on-site monitoring where the monitor can look through every single document that they want to see. You have to be very selective and make sure you're just looking at the critical stuff, because that means that there's less work that you're asking the sites to do upfront. And one thing that we've kind of figured out as we went along is that maybe doing monitoring in small amounts more frequently rather than doing every 6 months. Maybe we do it every 2 or 3 months, because then that's less workload of having to redact documents for each visit.
So I've got from the site view study coordinator tips. I just went through redacted documents. Actually, it was an audit, and it was quite painful at first. So I have a lot of information on this. So You want to organize your folders in a way that makes sense. And you want them also to match what the the sponsor is expecting. So for this sponsor in particular, and I think it makes pretty good sense, you have documents from consent, eligibility, treatment by cycle, response assessments, and adverse events. You want to ensure those similar documents are together and in chronological order, and the file names are clear and obvious. Remember, think like a monitor. Know what you're going to get dinged on. Be proactive in real time to correct the documentation in advance. And like I said, organize your files from the beginning, the way the monitor would request them. So that means in real time. So when you're going to file documents as a study chart, I would suggest doing PDFs right away instead of maybe paper documents. And I know this is a big change in procedure for a lot of sites that use paper primarily. And then, name the files very, very clearly. I would suggest a nomenclature system, and it should match what the monitor wants. I think, most people who know about Redaction will use software like Adobe Pro instead of going through each paper document and, marking off things with a black marker, which sometimes doesn't actually get rid of the information underneath. Like I said, prepare redacted documents in real time. 5 minutes at each clinic visit is easier than hours in the week before the monitoring visit. And I have to say, I had 10 patients monitored, and some of them are on treatment for about 2 years. And I think I would have needed someone full-time for about 6 weeks to redact and check and do all of that kind of stuff. So being proactive, if that is what your sponsor chooses as the method that they'll accept as redaction, then I would plan ahead. And if you do them in little chunks as well, you end up with less errors and chances for breaches of confidentiality and forgetting documents that the auditors want. It becomes a little bit frantic if you're doing it all at once. So I would suggest, speak with your sponsor, whoever's asking for the monitoring, and make sure that the expectations are the same for both of you. So I'm going to do a little redaction demo. If I can find my, whoops, sorry. I can find my mouse here. Let's go back. Here we go. Let's see if I can get out of here. Here we go. So, oops, okay. So this version of Adobe Pro is brand new. I'm using it not on my network for work, but some of you might be able to access your desktops from work and have to use it through that mechanism, and it might look a little different. So just be forewarned that it doesn't look the same as this in older versions. So it will have the same functionality. So just try and follow along, and I'll do my best to explain in a coherent way what's happening. So just to introduce you to what it looks like, this is sort of when you open it up, this is what you'll see. And you'll see here a lot of different functions on the side. And what you do if you want to add a function, let's say I wanted to add Adobe Sign, then you put open, oh, sorry, go back. No, hang on. This is because I can't see it with this thing. There we go. Now I can see it. Sorry, that one was already open. If I wanted to prepare a form, I can add it and it'll add on the side to the right. I'm not going to use that very often, so I'm just going to remove this shortcut and it'll take it off the side. So you can customize what's happening on the side here to make it a little bit easier to find things. Combining documents. So what I'm going to go through right now is how to combine documents. Sometimes you can do it from your Finder. Let's say you've got 2 documents here. Let's do this. And sometimes you can right click on this. And in some cases, it'll let you combine, it'll say like combine in Adobe. In my work instance, it has that function. In this, it doesn't. So I have to do it from the Adobe Pro program. Whoops. Let's go back, close. So I'm going to go combine files. add files, and you can drag and drop, or you can go to browse like from a file or folder. And so I'm just going to drag and drop into here. Okay. So just to point out something before I go on, is the way that I've organized this sort of dummy folder of a patient case. And I'll actually go through, this is sort of how I would organize something for something like C17 monitoring, where you have your institution monitoring, patient cases, pharmacy, and Rev and Reg. And of course, you want to keep those documents for prosperity in your shared drive. So I suggest you sort of organize them like that. And if we go into patient cases, you've got your patient number. And then within those, here's the folders that I've done because that's what the monitors, that's what the monitors / auditors requested that they be organized into. Okay, so you can see, like, well, I don't have anything in consent. This is just a dummy folder. I did put things in treatment. Let's see here. So you can see here, I've done very deliberate titles, and this becomes actually very important. You want your titles to both sort properly within the names. So you want to make sure that they're going in chronological order, in an order that makes sense, because it makes things easier later on. So just hang with me on that. And it needs to be, just remember that these names become bookmarks in the PDFs, okay? So it's very important that you sort of keep a good nomenclature going. I was going to do a combination of these documents. I just used dummy documents from the internet about chemotherapy, but they're too big for the demo because it takes too long to recognize text. So just, I'm going to do 2 shorter documents within adverse events. And so I'm going to combine the AE1 and AE2. So like you can see here, when I dragged and dropped it into this folder in Adobe Pro, you can see if you hover over that, the name will come up with the document, so you can make sure. And the one to the left is the first document that'll show up. The next one is the second document that'll show up. If you want to change the order, you can drag it over here. Again, with multiple documents, you can kind of put them in whatever order you want. And don't worry if you don't have them in order right away, because you can go back and change the order later with Adobe Pro. So let's go ahead and combine these. Okay, so pretend this is an adverse event. I just have documents here about adverse events because I can't use actual medical files, unfortunately, for the presentation. But I think it will give you an idea of how Adobe Pro works and the redaction tools within it. So you can see here that I've got my bookmarks, and the bookmarks are exactly the same as the title that I had in the Finder folders, or Windows Explorer for PCs. And so you can see here, there's the first document and then the second document. And so what I want to do first, I'm just going to bring up my sticky over here so you can follow along with the steps that I'm doing. So I've done number 3 right now, combining documents. So I'm going to save this. So you can see it's always saves as a binder first. I'm going to save this as, let's go to the adverse events folder that I previously had, and I'm going to save this as, let's see, what's this? What's the patient number? 899708. 8 I'm going to put number 2 because I tried it first before I did this. So I'm going to save here. Just a note for people, if you have your medical system, like my EMR, electronic medical record, we have to print as a PDF. So it's not save, it's print. That'll give you the PDF file for saving. So that's just a little note. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, so I've combined the documents, I've saved it under a name. And then first I'm gonna do a scan of the document, well, sorry, text recognition and scanning the document to make it better quality so that when we go to find words within the document to redact, we have a better chance of finding those words. So first I'm going to do scan and OCR, and then you can see up here it shows the different things that you can do. Now, if you wanted to just recognize text in this file, you could do that. I want to do both. I want to scan it for quality, and I also want to recognize text. And if you go to Enhance Scan Document, it has this option, Recognize Text, with it. So you don't have to do them separately. You can do them together in this instance of the most up-to-date Adobe Pro. So I'm going to do that. And you can see here at the bottom right, it tells you where it's at in optimizing the document. The more pages you have, the longer this takes. Just FYI, if you have I really recommend doing them in small chunks. Like I'm talking, 30 documents max within a PDF combination. This will help you to not get fatigued while you're looking through the document, and you can always combine them into bigger documents later. So that's a big tip that I have actually from when I did this. Okay, so that we've scanned the document, it should recognize all of the text in the document now. With medical records, if there's documents that are less quality or handwritten notes, it will not recognize everything, okay? So do not use this as a be-all, end-all. This is a tool to help redact and make sure that you get as much as you want in your first sort of like crawl over the document. Okay, so now I'm going to use the search and redact tool. And so let's open this up again. If you go back here, let's see, redact. So then I have this at the top here. You see redact. So redact text and images, and there's two options: redact pages or find text and redact. So I'm going to find text and redact. It comes up with this little warning. Exactly what I just told you. Don't expect everything to be redacted. You have to review the documents for sensitive information. Okay. Then we get this little window. Usually it pops up with a single word or phrase. Obviously for documents with, medical records, you're gonna have lots of different, things that you want to redact. You were gonna run and redact birth date, the medical record number, address, phone numbers, provincial health numbers, just like everything, right? So we're gonna use multiple words or phrases. And when you go to select words, what happens is that this little window pops up. You can either add manually, so I'm just going to do that and show you. Make sure you spell them right. Anyway, you can do it that way, or what you can do is, so let's say, I think I have a sticky somewhere. I had made a sticky. Find it later. Here, I'll do this. You can use an import function with text only, like .txt documents. So if you save a document either in, I think, well, in Mac you can use stickies. It'll save as a text document. And I think in other documents you can save a Word document as a text document. You just have to kind of play around with it. So because if you're doing this in real time, you're going to go back and try and redact that information multiple times. I suggest making a text document a list of all of those different things that you're going to want to redact. And so if you go import, I'm going to find, let's see, I think I saved it here. I did. Monitoring demo list.txt. So .txt is the file. And you can see here, I've made a list of all the different things that I want to redact in this document. I want to just point out here, within medical records, date of birth can be multiple different things. So I suggest you add different sort of configurations of date of birth and different things like that. So you can see here, I've got several different sort of configurations of date of birth. Well, not date of birth, but dates within the document. And then I've got some words that I want to redact. And so I'm going to click whole words only. And I found this out the hard way because I had put the September on one line, one on another, and then 2015. in that case, it redacts all of the ones and all of the, the 2015s and all that stuff. So you want the whole world, the whole, whatever's on that line to be redacted. So I'm just gonna click OK. Doesn't take very long. Again, the longer the document, the longer it's gonna take. And key step here, I'm just gonna close this part, is that you click apply. And when you click apply, you want your bookmarks to be maintained, okay? So you're gonna, sometimes it'll say sanitize and remove hidden information, or it'll give you a choice to unclick bookmark. We wanna turn this off right now, okay? Because you want those bookmarks to be there so you can find stuff within the document when you're combining tons of stuff together. So I'm gonna click OK. All right, and then it's gonna have me save. So I'm gonna save it within the same folder. It already automatically puts on underscore redacted, and you can just save it as that. It makes it very easy to look at. And so then you can have your sort of second look to make sure that it has redacted everything that you wanted to redact. If you wanted to redact without using that tool, without using search and find, what I'm gonna do is redact text and images. Let's say here is an addressograph. They often don't get caught, like the addressographs aren't a good quality scan, and so you'll often have to redact those, and you can just do it that way. Or you can do, when it recognizes text, it'll let you go over it like that. Then again, you have to do apply, don't sanitize, press OK, save it again. It'll say replace this folder, or replace the document. You can replace the document, and now it's updated. Okay, so that's redaction. You're gonna want to double check everything, double check, triple check, you know, and again, in smaller chunks, it's much better at double checking. Okay, so I've done this step here, number 7, and we've saved the document as redacted. If you want to make the file size smaller, what you're going to do is optimize the PDF. And so it's one of the choices that you can add to your side here. So what I'm going to do is optimize. So I want to reduce file size. There's a couple things here that you can choose. And let's do this. So I just click that. Again, save it in the same folder. It will replace the same file. And then you can see here, reduce size from 496 to 194. So that'll help you when you're trying to send documents to your monitors and sponsors, because the smaller the file, the better. I recommend when you are sending stuff to monitors, if your site has access to something similar to a Dropbox, but that's secure and like validated by them, I would suggest using that first, even though everything's redacted. You know, it's still, you know, there's always a chance of something. We're all human. And so I would just suggest that if you can go to your research institute and ask. The other thing that you can do here is, let's see if I've added it here. Oh, I know. Okay, so let's go back to, sorry, I gotta move stuff around here. Home. I want to add edit PDF. Oh, where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay. So you can see here what kind of gets captured. It's not in this one. Oh, header and footer. Sorry. If you want to add the patient number to the file, you can go to header and footer and add. Okay, so you can see at the bottom here where it's going to be placed. So I'm going to put the patient number. And you can see it sort of here under there. So I want it to be actually higher. So I'm going to move the margin up. And there you can see it's kind of above all of the other things in the document. You can put whatever in your header or footer, whatever you want. And then it's on every page. And then again, you save your document with the new information on it. There's an advanced function called Action Wizard, in which you can combine all of these acts together, and all you do is put the Action Wizard. So I've added Action Wizard to my sort of list of things on the side here, and I'll just demo one that I've already set up. So just to sort of show you how you do it, you can create a new action. So if you wanted to do add header and footer first, you can do that first. Then what you can do is do recognize text using OCR, optimize scan pages. So you can see here you're assigning actions in a certain order to do a process. That's just one. You save it. You can save it as actions 2, whatever you want, and it'll show up in this actions list. I've already made one for this demo, and it's called Monitoring Redaction. So let's say I added another file to this that wasn't redacted. What I would do is run the Action Wizard on this file. So you can add files. If I start, you can see here my sort of order of things that I have in the actions: recognize text, optimize, search and remove, apply redactions, add header and footer, reduce file size, and save. So those are my steps in what I need to do. It's going to start the next step automatically. You will still have to obviously do some things within there, but it will do everything to the full process. Are there any questions? I know this is a lot.
Feel free to use the chat function, or you could unmute if you have a question.
This is going to be recorded and available. So you know, if you don't get everything right now, then I think that you'll be able to get it at a later date. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation. Yes, it did. Yay. Okay. So let's see where we're. Oh, I didn't do it from the beginning. We were at demo. Okay, so pros and cons of the redacted documents. Like I said, it's very time consuming. Time consuming on the site end, and can be time consuming for the monitors as well if it's not organized well. And when you're doing it for the first time, it's very difficult to organize it well. So, you know, it does allow flexibility for the CRA to work on preparation on their own timelines, which is nice. They don't need to book time out of their day on the monitoring day to be available necessarily, just need to be available by email and text. And it allows the monitor flexibility to review on their own timelines within the specified monitoring days. There is a chance, obviously, of confidentiality breaches, so just to be aware of that. It's very easy to miss, you know, certain identifiers to be redacted, so just be very aware of what you're doing.
Stephanie, there's a question on the chat about whether there's a guidance document on how to use the redaction tool in Adobe. Is there an instruction?
I don't have one yet, but I anticipate I will be sort of watching the recording and making my process from that. I do have this little process that was on my sticky that I can sort of send around, but it doesn't include all the details. But I can definitely come up with one.
Okay. So the next and probably my favorite way of monitoring remotely is through remote EMR access. And so some of the tips that I have come up with as the monitor is it's really important to have your instructions and make sure you've got some IT support to be able to set up the access to the EMR before the date of the monitoring visit. I think Stephanie and I have both wasted days or half a day at least trying to get access to the EMR and having to call back and forth between the site's IT and my IT and that kind of thing. So it is really important. And maybe be able to test your access the day before. If it's possible to have a short tutorial on where to look for things with the CRA or the study coordinator, that would be super helpful. Or even just have a written instructions of where to find specific documents in the EMR. I know some sites that I have used the remote EMR have made me do all the training modules. And it's been like 3 weeks ahead of time so that they can get their access for me. And that's been great. Other sites just say, here's your access, have at her, see what you can find. So it does definitely vary by site. And then the other tip would be just to let the site coordinator know that they need to be available in case you can't find something. And I generally try not to spend more than 15 minutes looking for something. If I can't find it, maybe it's there and I just haven't been able to find it, and it's probably faster just to ask the coordinator. So I will tend to make a list of things and then maybe, you know, midday ask the coordinator for a quick call just to say, okay, how can you show me where to find this kind of thing?
Okay, so from the site end, make sure you have your confidentiality agreements in place and that access to the charts has been granted before the monitoring date. And try and see it from the monitor's point of view. They likely have no familiarity with your EMR. And some EMRs are better than others at organizing things. We've had instances where there's been EMRs where it'll say a date in the EMR that something happened, but it won't be the date of the document. So it makes it harder to find things. You know, the medical admin records are in like 200-page documents and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, really try and see it from the monitor perspective and help them as much as possible. Some EMRs allow bookmarking, which you might be able to use to your advantage. So you can always ask your EMR techs to help you with that. Show monitor the best and easiest way to navigate the EMR, whether it be chronologically or by document type. And that might differ depending on the data point. And be available to help guide the monitor through the EMR and have them make a list, just like Ellen had said. List of documents they can't find and agree on the time to check back with them. If you know a specific source that is notoriously hard to find, volunteer to go through that source with the monitor. I think it's, you know, otherwise you risk being them saying that they can't find something and that being a finding on your monitoring report. And you'll have to spend more time in the end answering queries and doing CAPA plans and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to do that. Save yourself some time. Like I said, bookmarking, if that's allowed, explain it well to the monitor how it works. Have a source location guide ready for the monitor to follow. So if some source is paper, redact that and send it, and then make a list of where all of the other things are in the EMR. And I've just done a little sort of example here. You know, echoes will be under documents in cardiology in the EMR. And then say like home medications will be sent by redacted email as a patient diary, same as for consent. And then, so really like specify what name it's called in the EMR so that when the monitor's looking for it, it's not named something different. It would be very useful. I see a question, but I can't see the full question. So if you guys let me know what that is, I can
Sure. So the question I see is, I'm keen to hear how community members in Northern Ontario, such as the Greenstone area, ever get to learn about and access clinical trials. How does that occur when individuals typically may not be made aware they exist? That's a good question.
Very good question.
It's something
I don't know if they probably haven't been able to set up the remote framework that Canada's been working on.
Yeah, there is a remote framework, at least in hematology oncology. There is a remote framework being developed for things like that. Yeah.
Because it is one of the principles of, you know, ethics to allow vulnerable populations access to the treatment options. So hopefully they will work on that.
Yeah. So some of the pros and cons of the remote EMR, it definitely allows the monitor flexibility to review the data on their own timeline within that specified monitoring visit. I've had some sites say, I've given you access to the chart for a whole week. Go ahead, monitor when you like. I've had others, it's a shorter time period, and some would prefer that we monitor during the day so that they can answer questions. But it does definitely give a little bit more flexibility than any of the other options. And again, the CRA doesn't necessarily need to book any time out of their day during the monitoring to be available, just available by email or text when the monitor has questions for them. There's probably minimal extra preparation you need to make for monitoring by remote EMR access, just because the study chart is there, and maybe you need to go through it and make sure it has everything that you think is going to be needed, but should be minimal extra preparation. That said, if the EMR is not well organized, it could take the monitor more time than usual to find the documents. So then the CRA might need to assist a little bit more. So the last method is probably my least favorite way of doing it, and it's by video conference and screen sharing. And so for this, I would usually send a list of the specific documents, Again, just like the redacted documents, you don't want to ask for absolutely everything because that's too much. You want to make sure you're selecting just the critical elements to review. You may need to have a separate confidentiality agreement for using the secure telehealth monitoring. I know somebody had asked a question ahead of time of what sort of systems do we use, and it really does depend on what the site allows and what their privacy office allows. I've used Zoom for healthcare, so it's considered secure to do monitoring by video conference. And then again, it might be just as, sorry?
Oh, I was just saying it's the same for me. Our province bought Zoom telehealth instance for Quebec. And so anyone in healthcare can use that, sign up and use that. They do prioritize the clinical staff, but we haven't had an issue since getting access.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You usually have to explain to them though that you are involved with the treatment of the patients to get the access though. So just keep that in mind.
Right, yeah. So again, another tip would be just as with the redacted documents, you don't want to have too much workload. So maybe monitoring more frequently would be an option to consider.
For study coordinators, ensure there's a system. The system used is very secure and approved by either your institution, the province, your quality assurance department. Look and see if there's SOPs at your site having to do with video conference, screen sharing for monitoring, and just really ensure that you're covering your butt, you know, security-wise and privacy-wise, to make sure that everything's in place. Again, you can bookmark the EMR for key documents if that's possible. You can prepare any source documents to show the monitor. You can ensure the coordinator who has chosen to show the source or paper documents of EMR and paper documents is really well versed in where stuff is for that patient. And they know the location of everything, and ensure there's enough time set aside to accommodate the monitor. So this is a little bit more time consuming for both people. Although, you know, I did a chunk of like regulatory monitoring at a site elsewhere, and it turned out to be okay. It wasn't too bad. I'll let Ellen go through the pros and cons.
Sure. So, so there is some flexibility to review the source either directly in the EMR or from a PDF file. That's how I have done monitoring by video conference before. Is the site was still paper-based, so they had to put everything into a PDF and then share that on their screen. There is definitely less flexibility and efficiency in terms of scheduling for, as Stephanie said, for both the CRA and the monitor. You tend to be in an all-day video conference or several sessions over several days. The CRA definitely has to be very familiar with the patient's charts and be able to scroll through and find the documents quickly. Otherwise, it's a lot of downtime. Definitely some cautions. It's a lot of work for the CRA if you're having to pull documents into a PDF rather than just pulling up the EMR to share. And an internet connection, a good internet connection is really important. I've had delays in video transmission, and it makes it really problematic because if the site is scrolling and they don't hear me say, can you just pause so I can read what's written there? They keep scrolling and then you have to scroll back, and it just, again, it causes really inefficient use of your time. And again, although we are using supposedly secure systems, video conferencing systems, there is always a risk of confidentiality breaches if somebody can hack into you. So it's just something you need to be aware of.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I would not use a like regular Zoom account or like a non-endorsed by the institution, province, or QA department program to do this. I really wouldn't. There's been too many confidentiality breaches talked about.
Yeah, it should also be probably approved by your privacy office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay, I guess I can go through some of this. So each option comes with pros and cons, obviously. Redaction all at once for a whole patient, case is extremely time consuming, and risks of confidentiality breaches due to misredactions as well as accidental deletion of certain source documents. Those are two of the things that really came up when I did it recently, and it was very, very frustrating. So if you have to go that way, redact in real time, and if you don't have any other choice, if you have another choice, I would probably recommend another method. But if you have to do it this way, then just prepare yourself and use the tools required to do it properly and quickly, as efficiently as possible. You can go through this.
Sure. So yeah, as I said, I think the remote EMR access is probably the least time consuming for the monitor and the site, as long as there's been proper monitor training with the EMR and that there's clear guidelines on being able to find the source. Video conferencing is super time consuming for everybody, but it can be less time consuming than redacting because you're not having to redact everything. So the main takeaway for the monitor is really that the goal is to make sure the site is learning and improving their quality control or quality assurance, and increasing their chances of success in good quality of research.
Some site takeaways, again, I'll repeat it all the time. Think like a monitor when doing everyday coordination. Organization and nomenclature is key. Try to find the most efficient and best quality ways of providing source to the monitor. And remember, in the end, this is all to find better treatments for the patients. The new procedures can be very frustrating, I will warn you. But really, I just kept thinking, this is for patient care. We're doing right by the patients, and try and keep them in your thoughts when you're getting a little bit frustrated with the process. Again, if you can get remote monitor access, it is probably the best, more efficient way to do things in the pandemic, which who knows how long it'll go for. So, all right. Any questions? We've only got 6 minutes.
Did either of you have some comments around, scanning documents? We talked about once they're in PDF, but do you have sort of some pro tips in terms of actually getting those into PDF when you're working with paper documents?
Absolutely. When you're scanning, it depends on the machine that you have. Hopefully you have a good machine that, gives you some options while you're scanning. When you go to scan something, first of all, some machines won't let you scan up to a certain size of document. So some of them will not allow, and I would say, again, you're gonna have to do them in chunks, probably maximum 30 pages at once. And then the other thing to do that will help you tremendously in redacting is to scan it at a high quality. So I think the setting that is default is 300 by 300 DPI or something. You want to go higher than that. So you can also, if you do color, if you put it on color, that often automatically bumps the quality of the scan. And so that's what I would recommend, is really look at those settings. And what becomes frustrating with those documents, if you've printed some one page and some dual-sided, then you have to go back and sometimes remove those documents from the combined PDF. So it's a little more frustrating to do the scanning, to be honest. I did PDFs straight from my EMR. And how you do that is you, instead of saving, you go print, and you should have an option to PDF that file. I would ask at your site if someone knows how to do that if you're not familiar with that process.
We had another question on the chat, and it's actually a good question, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention this. It says, if sites need to send in documents for remote review, are there any portals or platforms you would recommend for that? So that really is kind of up to this institution, which one they want you to use. Some of them have their own file transfer systems where they would then send me an email and say, you can download these, or you can only view these at this site for this amount of time, that kind of thing. Others send passworded emails to me, or passworded documents to me. It really just depends on what your privacy office and your institution policies are on that.
Yeah, our institution has our own instance of what they call Nextcloud, and it's more secure than Teams. So I don't know if some of you use Teams, but Teams is not very secure because that data is housed in the US, most likely. So I would caution against using anything like that. Again, check with your institution, check with your privacy office. See, honestly, they must have something in place for this kind of thing during COVID, because if they don't, I'm not sure how they think their staff are going to function. So most likely there's a quality team within your hospital, even if it's clinically not research, that you can go to and sort of get information.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I want to thank you both so much. This has been a really great hands-on workshop, and it's really interesting how efficiency and quality are improved by using the tips. So thank you so much for sharing all of these points. I know this will be well accessed.